Hello, I'm Taylor Tam BOTC channel. This is just a quick stream. Uh, Besides the argument of the difficulty of the game, people like journalists always arguing the game needs an easy difficulty. The other thing that I've always heard different people like Frostbreak and such, and Angry Joe, saying the game doesn't have lore, they don't see story or whatever. Uh, Besides item description, besides using environmental storytelling, you could possibly be doing too. Besides putting a incomplete puzzle together, which I do think the game very much is that, and there are excellent examples of why it certainly can. And besides side quests that potentially have their own stories going off to the side that actually exist in the game, here are a few examples. So first off, there are 3 NPCs that give you the most story in particular. One is the cat. Is it Ava? I'm trying to remember her name off the top of my head. But the cat, part of that one covenant down in the Dark Root, or is it Deep Root Garden? It's one of the two. Area will give you the most on Artorias. And then she can also be seen in the DLC along with Sif, who you fight later, and his alternate cutscene, depending on how that plays out. The fact they put those details in there, and a couple other interesting things that Artorias has mentioned before the DLC even came out. And then there's the guy in the red crimson cloak that you can meet on top of a building down in New Londo, who gives you even more story-related stuff. And then finally, there's the 2 serpents, technically. Both serpents, especially Frampt, when you eventually meet him, will give you the most story-related stuff. They are the strongest links to the story, and then, of course, everyone going hollow or crazy and attacking you by the end, unless you do certain things to save them or progress their quest in a certain way. There is also, of course, we can use item descriptions, all that kind of stuff. But it's just interesting to see they had a lot of this stuff planned out before the DLC even came out, that there was even going to be an Artorias of the Abyss. Artorias existed within not only the mouths of certain characters talking about him, but also within the lore of certain objects in the game. But I also found something interesting. I don't know if people know this, but we always had a talk about this image here, this cover image. A lot of people theorize, and I'm pretty sure somebody probably already theorized what I'm about to talk about, but I'm going to do it anyways just for this video. But people always theorize this is Artorias going into a boss door to face Manus. This is him traversing the abyss. And also people point out the arms in which he's using the sword and shield. I think this definitely is... There's definitely things that say this could be his armor, as well as, like, obviously this cloak bit here coming off the side, and I'll show you in a sec. And I think this is definitely his shield. Where is it? See this? Yeah, it definitely looks like his shield. And then we got the sword, the hilt. Especially this part here, you can pay attention to with that. And it certainly looks very similar. This is a little thinner looking, but you could argue that's just the artwork at the time in designing it. But it's very interesting that that was on the... And you gotta think about it. This is on the cover of, like, I think the original version of the game before Artorias of the Abyss or the remaster or anything even came out. So this was one of the first planned things for the cover art, or maybe not first planned, but yeah, it's just cool to see how further it went. And then I compared other art of, like, the back of your character to this, and there is the shoulder pad as well as a very similar helmet, because Artorias's helmet has this thing on it. And see here that's a bit thinner on the hilt this time with those parts, but this is like the Abyss version. There's like 3 different versions of the sword, but he's got this flowing part just like that, though this is a little longer. The armor almost looks similar on that side, and of course in game his arm is broken, but it's very interesting details. And of course you can use this as an example too. Got the shoulder pad on that arm again. Another thing I noticed with that picture is like there's some sort of dagger or something, or blade. There's only one blade I can think of that kind of looks like that, and I think it belongs to like his love interest character within the game, but I don't know. Yeah, but the thing was always theorized this is Artorias. I think this is you, and I think this is you, and you can get both his sword and shield in the game, as well as his armor. I think this might be the player going into here, and this was the thing that I don't know why I didn't connect it before myself. I'm pretty sure people have connected this already, like years ago, but I thought it would be a good case for why there's definitely some story in here. So of the Lord Gwyn's knight Artorias, who was consumed by the abyss, the legend that Artorias repelled the abyss only told half of the story. It seems that he was defeated, and his honor preserved by some unsung hero who is the true victor over the abyss. I think this is your character going into the abyss, and not Artorias, for various reasons. The helm, you can still correspond that elite armor set with this one. This is much shorter. This is his sword and shield, but you can technically get his sword and shield in the game. And you could technically say he took his sword and shield after he died, that he had it on him, or it was lying around somewhere nearby, like especially the shield, since you can't really find that otherwise. Yeah, you can still achieve that stuff. And I thought that was an interesting way. Another reason that brought me to this is I was actually watching this guy's video, and he got to the point where he beat Artorias, and I saw that item description about the unsung hero. And I was like, that's interesting. I think you're on the cover art. I don't know if anybody, once again, I think that's already been corresponded. But I thought it would be useful for the argument of like why there's definitely some story going on in the game. There are many, many freaking examples, and once again, I love the way Dark Souls. There's also other YouTubers who have played Dark Souls for the first time. I can't remember the other YouTuber off the back of my head, if they're even in here somewhere. Her. She was playing Dark Souls. She's never played Dark Souls before, and as she was playing, she was discovering that she saw lore as she was playing, even though she's never played Dark Souls before. She has played Bloodborne, she has admitted to that, but she's never played Dark Souls before, and she saw the story as she was playing. She was looking for it, and she actually saw what her imagination was letting her do. And this is why I love Dark Souls, the way Dark Souls does its story. It's unique from every other game. Every game has to shove cutscenes down your throat or have an NPC stand there and talk to you for hours on end about dialogue, which can work, definitely, but so many games do it. Dark Souls has been one of the only ones to do how it does its story creatively. And just like a book, you leave it up to your imagination to create the words that you're seeing in like a book. Same with something like Morrowind, since there's a lot of reading in that. You use your imagination for that stuff. It's something that allows you to use your imagination and to put the pieces together. But it's an incomplete puzzle, which comes to my last example, which is I think the strongest part of what shows there's a story, but it's a story that can certainly be hidden. Like take also, for example, just how the frick do you figure out to get in the DLC in the first place? Like, it's nearly impossible to figure that stuff out. So there's definitely hidden stuff besides the fact that there's mimics, there's illusionary walls and stuff. and that Hidetaka Miyazaki, as the games go on, it's clear that he likes to mess with his players, especially with certain items like that useless pendant that you can choose as a gift at the beginning of the game. There's definitely some trolling as well as just some secrets going on in different ways he likes to perceive things. But finally, Anor Londo is one of the biggest places when it comes to strong storytelling. Besides visually, Gwendolyn is the connection to one of the biggest parts of why there's storytelling. First off, Gwendolyn isn't very easy to find, also behind an illusionary wall, which shows you that not only is there definitely incomplete puzzle to the story, but it's not that easy to find in the first place. Sorry if I'm getting loud, I keep seeing it go in the red. Uh, but then when you're talking to Gwendolyn, or you kill the illusion Guinevere after defeating frickin' Smo and Orstein, which, by the way, they have their own lifts, the small and big elevator for both of them. If that's not the visual storytelling, I don't know what is. As well as just characters that have died in your universe, like when you find Lautric's body up there in the rafters, and various other places where characters have died and you can find their body. But he's one of the biggest connections because if you kill Guinevere, the entire illusion that that one character hidden behind a wall in a bonfire that you might have a hard time finding, and a boss you have a hard time finding, that clearly his entire boss fight is him using an illusion to fight you, created the whole illusion of the sunlight and a bunch of the characters within that castle. So that was one of the strongest things that made me know that there was an illusion, and that even the main quest line feels kind of like a lie. Besides that Dark Covenant that you can run into, that's like, yo, you should go for the Dark Lord ending. And Frampt, who was tricking you to do what Gwen already did, and you to take his place, certainly shows that there's different ways this story can go, not only for other characters, because characters like Solaire and stuff can either end up fighting alongside you in the final battle, or end up dying in the end to something horrific, such as you and him being mind controlled by a bug later. Spoiler for those who haven't played Dark Souls. But how do you find out how to save him is the real part of the puzzle. So it definitely, there are examples that show that it is a incomplete puzzle and it's purposed that way. There are various other examples besides what I've done or what VaatiVidya has done or Dave Control or whatever, whomever. There are definitely examples there that there is story. Each game gets more obvious that there's story, like Elden Ring and Sekiro are the most obvious games with story. But I like less obvious story of Dark Souls. Uh, Besides the intro cutscene and kind of the outro cutscenes, you don't always have a whole lot to go off of, and I like that mystery. It's kind of the opposite of something like The Witcher 3 or Skyrim. Skyrim and Witcher 3 still do some world building and like visual storytelling, but uh, Dark Souls makes it a giant priority, as well as how secretive it is and incomplete even it is, and that you have to fill in the blanks, use your imagination, and that's what makes Dark Souls for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, its story very special and unique to them. I hope you found this interesting. Sorry it was just this screen in the background for the most part, but those were my strongest examples to help out with why there's definitely something going on with the story and lore. Because I always think people are looking at Dark Souls players and being like, you're pretentious or you're just like FNAF players when it comes to building lore. It's not actually there and you just shove things in. I don't think that's entirely true. And there's not always a problem with that as long as it doesn't get too pretentious or too ridiculous or out there. And I think because the game gives us just enough to fill in some of the blanks, but not all of them, It's kind of like an incomplete pizza or incomplete pie or something. Um, you don't have every piece there. And I mean, you either go looking for them or you'll never get them truly. I mean, it took until the third game to find out who that broken statue of, and that Solaire was not the son of Gwen, to finally see the Nameless King was the true son of Gwen. So, and I've messaged on Frostbreak's videos, but I truly think there is story. I truly think there is. I'm sick of what's that meme? I'm sick of pretending there isn't, or whatever the frick. I think there's story there, and I'm not. I'm sick of pretending there isn't, or whatever the frick it goes. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed or found something interesting at least. Don't know if I would say enjoyed. It was just mostly this background. But you have an awesome day. Let me know what you think or what you found on your adventures through Dark Souls, and I will see you next time. I'm just kind of trying to put that whole argument to rest because it's one that's still, because especially with Frostbreak coming in and playing the game, it's just one that's being recreated again, a freaking debate that's being recreated, but I don't agree with it, and those are my reasons why. And I'm sure there are tons of other examples either already given or can be given.